Hi, I'm Timothy Tew, and today I'm with Slonem, an artist who has achieved international acclaim, an inimitable artist and painter, and he's done so with imagery that includes bunnies, butterflies, portraits of Abraham Lincoln, Queen Elizabeth, bayou, frogs, lots of things. I was talking to an artist a painter who also works in the movie industry, and he said one of the things he had learned working in the movie industry is it's very important to work fast and know where you're going. You obviously do this. Can you fill us in on how working fast is important to you, or how that fits with your work?
Well, my work has changed over the years. Since many mid-'80s, I've been painting wet into wet, which is like painting a fresco. And I start with a wet surface. I'm painting not directly on the canvas, but on a layer of paint that has a timeline of drying, which is about 3 days. So I don't have a choice, and it seems to suit my way of working to work on this fresh surface. Sometimes I do larger things in sections. Sometimes I do, 100-foot paintings. I have one that I've been working on for about a year now that's going to go to a show in a museum in the fall. But I am on a complete timer. It's like boiling an egg, the length of time that I have to complete something, or I can't do it. I have to, not only does it have to be wet for me to paint it, it has to be wet enough for me to make the marks into it, which is a whole nother labor-intensive process.
And can you tell us about how you make these marks? Because you were saying everything is done individually with a brush.
Well, I use the front and the back of a brush. I paint the painting with the front of the brush, and then I take smaller brushes and I carve them to a point, and I make each mark one at a time by hand, and it takes a lot of carving. I go through dozens of brushes that way, but I use the brush on both sides.
Right.
So I'm painting with the stick in the second phase.
And this gets to something that's very important in your work we were talking about last night and just a few minutes ago, is repetition. Repetition of imagery, repetition of mark.
Yes. Well, it's taken on a whole lot of meanings for me over the years. I didn't know why I was doing this in the beginning, but it's a form of divinity in my expression. It's about repeating a mantra. It's about this Italian theory.
Fenerbahce, I think.
Yes. And, we used to take walks in India and look at leaves of trees and blades of grass, and it all adds up to something much bigger, which is kind of a surprise and has bazillions of forms and shapes creating it, and they're all as important as the previous one. I don't think there's any two leaves or fingerprints with the same pattern. So that's kind of what it's about. I repeat rabbits as my warm-up paintings, and they all have different expressions and characters and names, and it's just a complete surprise. So they're kind of channeled in that way, and I like owning a subject matter because then I can play with materials more. Over the last few years, more new materials have entered my work, such as diamond dust. That's become a big thing with me, and the metallic pigments have entered over the years, and new ways of using them, and just instead of struggling over what I'm going to paint next, which sort of just pops out. I've been through a myriad of subject matters. Almost everything you see came really out of the saint paintings I did in the late 70s and 80s.
And those were paintings of saints often with animals in it, right?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of them had New World connections. And I did both, Christian and Hindu saints. I did huge paintings on the theme of the Mahabharata, with all kinds of wild things included, from gorillas to seals and saints, and I just uncovered them with this armory that I've had for the last 4 years. I've been able to salvage all my early works, many of which I thought were lost or gone forever.
Wow.
And I've found so many things I hadn't seen for 30 years, so it's really a great period of reflection on where it all started for me.
Right. Can you referred to it several times and I've read about it, but just talk to us a little bit about your spiritual life, because that's very, very important to you.
It is. I don't really want to talk about it
You
a
don't?
lot,
Okay.
but I have always sought out masters, and I see Mother Mira in Germany. I go to Germany periodically. She's at the foot of Schaumburg Castle. But it's just been a part of my life since I was a child in Hawaii, where I was exposed to every culture under the sun.
Right.
And which is another funny thing, because recently I did a DNA test and it said that I had South Pacific genes or something, among others, Eastern European and whatever. But I don't know if they Google you and see where you lived as a kid. That was a tremendous influence on me.
Right.
And from the King Kamehameha cloaks, which I've done feather walls and installations forever, salvaging the molted feathers of my birds, but I was so impressed as a child that it would take 300 years from 2 feathers of the mamo bird to make a king's cloak. They were red and yellow. When we went to the Bishop Museum, I was so impressed by Iolani Palace, and Queen Liliuokalani collected Gothic furniture, which is a great passion of mine. I don't even remember that, but it just re-entered my
consciousness.
my physical life, my daily routine at this point.
Hunt, you were mentioning your impressions of growing up in Hawaii. I thought it was a really beautiful story about the morpho butterfly. Can you just tell people that? I thought there was, so people get some sense of where these.
Okay, we have to fast forward for that, because I was an exchange student in Nicaragua when that happened when I was 16. And I actually had a choice of 4 places I could go, and I was so impressed by the stamps of Nicaragua and butterflies and birds. And they're just so extraordinary, more than any other Central American country. And I actually met the man whose collection most of it came from. He gave me a hooded praying mantis, which was very rare when I met him. Anyway, he collected everything under the sun. But I was with the family I stayed with, and they had coffee plantations and different properties, and I saw the iridescent morpho butterfly flying through the coffee fields, and it was the first one I had seen alive. I'd seen them in museums, and it was just the most exhilarating experience to see this. And there were just thousands of things in nature there that were influenced me to this very day. I mean, all of this, I used to, in the cotton fields, there would be streams, and there would be like thousands of butterflies perched, drinking the water, but just extraordinary, like day moths and iridescent swallowtails, just things to me that I never recovered from. It's not that I didn't recover, they just inspired me and etched themselves into my consciousness, and I still work with them on a daily basis.
Well, you love animals, and I mean, in your studio, how many birds do you have?
Maybe 50. I have mostly parrots now, so they live a long time, but I used to have, 14 toucans and hammerkops and troupials and all kinds of barbettes, but they only live to about 20 if you're lucky, but parrots can live forever, so I don't buy them, they've just been given to me in some kind of an animal rescue.
And you have a collection of turtles.
I have turtles, and they're getting big. Bigger they get, the harder it gets to deal with. But they've been raised in captivity now too that are doing well.
One thing that is very interesting about you is you're a passionate collector.
Yeah.
A collector of antiques, a collector of homes. You have how many homes now?
I have 7 historic homes.
And tell us about that. Where this passion comes from, and how do you kind of reconcile being a contemporary artist and yet being so interested in the past at the same time?
Is that a conflict?
No, but I think it's interesting for people because it is, a lot of people don't have that same appreciation for the past.
Right. Well, I'm a little older than a lot of artists are today.
But you're also inimitable.
I used to have dreams about plantation houses as a kid, and my great-grandfather's house in Tennessee was torn down 6 months before I was born. It was built in 1850, apparently. I thought he built it, but I'm learning all this new stuff, and I'd only heard about it. I never saw a picture of it. So somehow, I wanted to recreate that in my mind, and thought, my family would visit me or something twice. Anyway, I just keep going, and I consider them my art projects now, saving the past, time travel, recreating lost experiences of settings. I love looking at old books on particularly the 19th century of interiors, which are kind of starting to catch on finally. I've always used a lot of color. Museum, the Whitney practically uses the same colors I've used for 100 years now. Everything used to be white, and now museums have they're mixing it up.
Right.
I feel like we're entering an age where you can look at the past without shuddering.
Yes, things have definitely changed in that regard.
Not completely, but there's more. I mean, in the 60s, when I kind of formed my sensibility, they were using colonial Spanish frames and Picassos and de Koonings, not so much anymore.
Right.
And I have always loved that, and I'm a great fan of frames which have become an art in their own right, and there are shows in museums now of just frames, historic frame collections. Eli Wilner really put that one on the map. It inspires my work. I feel like it's part of it. In the 19th century, people had their frame look. Whistler, there's a Whistler frame, there's a Sargent frame. We're talking about the persimmon that he loved so much in the borders of his frames. All these people had real ideas about frames. Today, Henry Geltzeller, who I was one of his 14 favorite artists when he died from the Met, and he said, "Are you sure about these frames?"
Right. Well, it's anachronistic.
But I've seen shows of Morandi that were framed in Italy. Every little painting had a unique, amazing frame on it at the Guggenheim years ago. It was the most inspiring thing for me to see the brilliance of the merger of the painting and the frame, which sounds superficial, but it really isn't in my mind.
Well, it's the setting. And the decorative is so important. And
I don't think it's decorative. I think it's really art on a very high level. To make this merger with all these different Morandis is brilliant. I mean, it's a really hard thing to do in my book. Anyway, so I'm kind of reintroducing that as a thought in the world we live in. And people seem to like it. I mean, I say if you hate the frames, give them back to me, and sometimes I get a group that
Right.
I don't really care, but it does create the works, source of inspiration. And when I get a great frame, which isn't all the time, I'm just so thrilled. Sometimes I've done 10 different paintings for the same.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. There's some gorgeous frames in your studio.
I try to keep
beautiful. There's some gorgeous ones there. And gorgeous paintings too.
And I send them to my homes if I really want to keep them, although that's not surefire anymore either.
with your exhibition, I mean, I think you have 25 solo shows in museums and galleries this year. You have to produce a lot of work. We were talking about that earlier. And there are people who have not collected your work, and they go, well, he produces so much work. How is that going to be reflected in values? Do you have anything for people that are scratching their head trying to justify or figure this out? They don't really understand the notion of getting imagery out there is so important to values. Can you address that?
Well, I'd rather not, but I will. You know, there's a lot of artists that are extremely prolific on this planet. They tend to, they think, you know, showing it. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but Warhol, Picasso left 40,000 unsold works when he died. That's just what was left.
Right.
Other artists have left warehouses through, and you know what? There's nothing left. So if somebody's sought after, they're out there, and there's more for people to own, and it hasn't diminished the value in many cases. Some artists, we only know of, 25 Vermeers or something, and they're just not for sale, so whatever value they are doesn't really matter.
Right.
Look at Milton Avery painted a great deal. You just go with your rhythm. It's authentic. It's you. It's real.
Right.
Who cares in the long run? I don't paint to up my prices. I paint because I need to. I want to. I have something that comes through me that I don't want to control. And a lot of the works for the shows you're talking about, particularly in museums, are coming from collections, and they're not all new.
Okay. I guess that is true.
Yeah. And I tend to show 100 framed bunnies in one wall. I have 40 hanging in the Cincinnati Museum. They tend to go in big groups.
Right.
That's sort of the salon style thing, which I saw at the Renwick Museum in Washington as a little kid. I'm kind of reviving things that were the popular form of the day. Turner painted, constantly and quickly, do a whole show the night before.
Well, I mean,
so I think it's a non-issue.
Well, it is, but I think
and people don't even care whether you paint your own paintings anymore, which I don't care whether people do or not. So there's so many things that really don't ring true today.
Right. Well, I think there's a lot of people that just don't understand. They don't understand the history. They don't understand what other artists have done.
Well, there's a lot of control trips and fake IDs. It's like fake news.
Right. Well, it's good. You said it best when you said this is just who you are. It's authentic. It comes
I'm
through.
not changing myself to fit into a pattern that people want to maybe believe, but it's not even true. So why would I? Fortunately, I was around when certain artists were making those works. Milton Avery really painted a lot, and some of them are great. And they're selling, anyway, that's not the point of it for me. Time will tell. People say, what do you want to be remembered for? I'm going, who says you're going to be remembered at all? There's no guarantees. But anyway, I just kind of marched to my own drummer here, and I think the houses, maybe, the studio, the whole environment in which my work is created might be the main point of this whole deal. The way Gustave Moreau's studio is probably better known than his. I don't want to say that, I don't know that that's true, but there's so much to be inspired by in the environment that the work came out of. Mm-hmm. And so many artists' studios are legendary. Giverny, you think he didn't paint a lot?
Right. Exactly.
Anyway, I just think people love to harp on these ideas, particularly in this age of value, but all kinds of people are all over the map, more than I am, for sure.
Well, I think it's really interesting here you address it. It becomes clear, and that's really what.
Well, that's my perception, and a lot of things that are, a lot of dealers want an artist to make 8 works a year, but then they do millions of prints and other things.
Right. Well, I tell people that if you only produce 40 paintings a year and had your same stature and fame, they'd have to pay $180,000 for a bunny painting, because that's what it takes to keep all this.
Well, my work is, anyway, it goes by scale, and I've sold for up to almost 500,000 already, but for very large works.
Right, right.
So fortunately, my smaller works are still priced in a way that a lot of people can afford them and a lot of people can't, you know?
Right.
Just is what it is. But that's what I do, and that's my thrill, and that's what keeps me going, and I'm doing it for a long time.
Right.
And I like traveling around for shows. I just came back from Dubai, and Indianapolis, and Florida, going to Germany and Paris, and I have a show in the National Gallery in Bulgaria coming up. I have a show in National Gallery in the Ukraine coming up, in Odessa, and it's greatly inspiring for me. A lot of the influence in my work has come from experiences in foreign travel, like Haiti and India, and I'm supposed to have a whole bunch of big shows in Spain coming up, and Red really came out of that initial travel. Scandinavia led to all this white period of my work. I called the Be Cool series.
Is there anything you want to say about the future or the immediate future, something you're looking forward to in particular that people should
Well,
know?
I'm very thrilled that I've been able to do sculpture in the last few years, and I'm unveiling a 22-foot butterfly sculpture for a butterfly park in Louisiana on Thursday coming up. And that's something that I'm really thrilled to be able to explore on a large scale and for the first time in my life. And it's just a whole new world. And I like working on very large projects. I've done a lot of huge paintings like the Bryant Park Grill, and I had something at the World Trade Center that was 80 feet long in Hamilton, Washington, and a lot of private commissions recently in Texas that are 30, 40 feet long. I really feel like I'm doing something on a large scale. That makes me feel like I have a job,
Right.
a purpose in life, other than just doing my thing.
And you work. I mean, I've seen your studio and I've seen where you work. I mean, you work a lot. Now, do you work on multiple paintings at once? Or do you
I'm preparing them. I'm thinking about what I'm going to paint. I have a lot of work in one space, but as I've just explained, I have a very short period of time to finish them. So I have to be real sure about what I'm starting and what I'm able to do.
And how much does a painting change from the inception, where your ideas, to the finish? I mean, is it?
I don't really have an idea of what a finished work is going to look like.
Okay.
You know, it's kind of magical, and things come through are totally unanticipated. And you know, I'm not saying I love all of them, and I do destroy a certain amount. But I'm also have to live with it for a while to really get a read on, you know, and things that look questionable and iffy 30 years ago suddenly really strike a great chord.
Right.
So there's a time factor, there's a lifespan of an idea coming into appreciation. Certain things people immediately react to in a positive way, and other things they don't get for years to come.
Right. It takes time to see. Before we close, would you like to say something about your latest book?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a few latest books. Bitty Bunnies is really
Oh, yes, I've heard of Bitty Bunnies, right?
Bunnies. Bitty
Bunnies.
But the newest book that's big, that just came out, is produced by Esselina. It's called Gatekeeper, World of Folly. Gesa von Habsburg wrote the foreword, and Sarah Ruffin Costello wrote an essay called From Arms to Art. And I have an armory in Pennsylvania that was built in the late 19th century by the coal owners, the big industrialists, or whatever you call coal mine owners. What is the correct word? Anyway, they had their own private armies, and they built this fortress that looks a little like the Park Avenue Armory. And for some reason, the state of Pennsylvania got rid of all their armories It was the National Guard before I got it, so it was in functional shape. It's a whole city block. It's 150,000 square feet, and I have done my deal there and filled it with antiques and my early works and plants, and it's just a colossal statement, and this book is
All about it.
all about it.
Right.
That's the largest thing I've ever done. I'm not sure that it's the largest I'll ever do.
How do you feel your passion is different between your passion for your paintings and the passion for your homes and your collections? Does it feel different, or do they all feel kind of the same?
Well, it's like, I don't do them all simultaneously.
Right.
So, I feel, painting is my glue. That's what I do. I feel really like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. The homes are by the grace of God that I've been able to acquire what I have. Didn't think I could, and it's quite a feat to keep it all going, and there's always something more to do. And it's thrilling, but it's really, I just thank the universe every day that I'm able to sustain it and do more. And I mean, one of my passions about having a show is going antiquing, which we're doing in 5 seconds.
Yes.
And I incorporate it into the homes. I do fabrics and wallpapers as of the last few years, and I love saving things. I love having things recarved. We have a chair by Sabrek at Maywood Plantation, which is my latest purchase, which I studied in college. I visited 40-something years ago, and I wanted it for 30 years. It came true. So keep your thought active. On Earth, apparently, it's harder to do that. Because you really have to wish and pray for a long time. Anyway, this came true. It was a miracle, and people saw me waving from the balconies years ago. And I have pictures of me waving from the balcony. But it's a great task to do. Anyway, why am I telling you about Maywood?
We were talking about the passion, the different ways you feel passionate about homes versus art or your collections and kind of.
Yeah, well, homes are like kind of, everything in the world can go wrong on a very serious level. I took on the Woolworth's house, which had been abandoned for 18 years. We didn't have one single working system. I have to work with metaphysicians. Everything I did was going wrong. I had to put in ceilings 3-4 times. I kept getting things wrong. And I had my friend and Ghostbuster come there. I was just at my wit's end, and she said everything was gridded to Mr. Woolworth. Every little corner, every window sill.
Wow.
And Woolworth was created in that house, and other wonderful, famous things. And she opened the grid so that I could be part of it, and then things flowed. It's like these are just not realistic ho-hum projects. There's a metaphysical component that's very profound. I had something to say about Maywood, but I can't remember what. But it's just so exciting to bring it back. We just got some great window treatments for the music room. I love finding things and reconfiguring them to fit the house. We're hanging chandeliers that are period appropriate. I intersperse my work in the middle of it in color, and I kind of breathe new life into these. What if somebody said it was like Lakeside was like a giant girl in a ball gown going to McDonald's or something.
Are these like laboratories for you at all? Do you think of them that way?
Completely.
Okay.
But it's like beyond me that's doing it. When I find things, we may find something today that'll go to Belterre and fit this one room magically.
Right.
So, to me that's very exciting. But it's a treat rather than, just painting and really.
Work of it, because it is.
It's work, and it's so of another it's like in the ethers.
Right.
It's another dimension, and it's not as much about. There seem to be other forces at work, Maybe in both instances. Anyway, I could go on for years.
Well, I guess we need to wrap this up so we can go shopping.
That's it. Corner with a missing wall bracket.
I hope everyone will come and see this beautiful show. I mean, there are paintings from this last year and some from several years back. I went up to New York and made a selection of some of them, and I think we've got some wonderful works here. It will be on view until March the 30th, and then we will continue to have your works. And we're thrilled. This is your third show with us, and we're thrilled to work with you. We just like your energy.
Plug me into Atlanta.
Well, and you plugged us into the Hunt Slonem world, and that is really important to us. We enjoy that, so thank you, Hunt. And thanks for coming, and
My pleasure.
we'll go and see what we can do for some houses now.
Okay.